Welcome back to our podcast, Past the Future, second episode. If you haven't seen the first episode, make sure you go watch that because we hosted the Netflix superstar Simone Baldasseroni, who plays Rigel, the protagonist of the trending Netflix movie The Tearsmith, which is currently third in the charts on Netflix UK. Well, welcome back to our podcast. Today, our special guest of the day is Jordan Tabone, owner and founder of the clothing brand LUXUS, directly from New York. Jordan, how are you, first of all?
How are you, Antonio? I'm doing pretty good.
I'm good, thank you so much. It's about 6 p.m. in New York, right?
Yeah, it's about 6:30 now. Yeah.
It's 11 p.m. here in London, but we do like a late podcast. I feel very relaxed doing it at this time, so I'd say let's get back into it. So let me introduce everyone to Jordan. In 2015, Jordan launched LUXUS, his clothing brand. Since then, he sold thousands of dollars of clothing apparel, and his garments are available to shop in hundreds of clothing stores across the US, including top-notch clothing retail stores such as Barney's and Macy's. So, Jordan, first question that comes to mind, I think, to all our listeners and to me as well is everyone would like to know how do you start a clothing brand? And talk us through the process of your own brand. Like, how did you came up with this idea?
Well, I started this brand to kind of create awareness in my local town to make people, think more outside the box and dream big. So my buddy of mine, we started this clothing company together, and instantly we saw great numbers. And the way we started was very small. We started with only 20 shirts, few sizes, and went from there. We sold our first batch within a week, and was actually funded by my dad, and we just took off from there. And it was mostly word of mouth and local business to start, which is the way you need to do it.
It must be very cool to sell out your collection online when you first start, right? From a small town, especially out of New York. Let us know about the early years of your brand. Like, how much did it take to get your brand out there and recognized?
Yeah, I mean, with starting a business, there's always going to be bumpy roads. Now, when we started LUXUS, it was rough. There were days where, we questioned, was this what we want to do? Is this business model going to be right for us? But sticking it out with my business partner, we've only seen great results, and that just comes with hard work and dedication.
Nice. That's a great story, actually, that can inspire, of course, our listeners as well who are interested in launching their own clothing brand, which became a trend, actually, because we've seen a lot of new clothing brands, emerging clothing brands coming out recently. And I want to talk more about your background, coming from New York and talking about streetwear fashion. How much of an influence did the rap culture have on the creation of your brand? Are there any particular people that inspired you?
Honestly, rap music played little to no part in our inspiration. It mainly came from skateboarding. Now, I started skateboarding in high school and fell in love with the culture and the people and the fashion that came along with it. So that's kind of where our brand originated from, was more of the skate culture more than the hip-hop and rap culture. Not to say that we didn't take from those influences and contact certain artists, because they work hand in hand, but our first inspiration was definitely more on the skateboarding side than hip-hop and rap.
There are obviously many popular brands across the US, skateboarding brands such as Supreme. Did Supreme kind of influence you on creating designs for your brand, for example? Or you just saw Supreme as a competitor in the beginning?
Yeah, I definitely looked at Supreme more as a competitor. I mean, with their basic logos and their style wasn't really what we were looking for, but it was very similar in market because we wanted to make more of an upscale streetwear brand. But there was a few skate brands that did catch our eye, and that got us into the fashion game. And a lot of the stuff was available just as Zoomies. But brands like Plan B and Grizzly Grip Tape, and pretty much all the brands as Zoomies are kind of what got us into it.
It's very interesting to know how many competitors you have, especially in the States, since the streetwear and skateboarding culture is huge over there. As I mentioned you when I invited you to join our podcast and blog focuses a lot on trends, so both from the past and the future. And the question I wanted to ask you is, how did trends help you to make your brand known and sell out? Like, did you actually adapt your brand to some trends to sell out more clothing?
Honestly, Antonio, we kind of just did what we liked. We more looked into ourselves rather than other brands. Now, not to say we didn't take any inspiration. For example, we really like left-chested small logos and very basic. And on the contrary, we also like big logos and bulky things as well. So it's kind of both of the spectrum, I would say.
I find it very fascinating how these trends these days play such a massive role. I don't know what's your thought on that, but I will ask you that right now. We constantly see like all these brands going through so many rebrandings and adapting to current trends, to satisfy customers and stay relevant, of course. As we know, there are brands like Abercrombie that basically changed everything, and they disappeared for a couple of years after 2015, and now all of a sudden they're coming back with like new collections and new logos, and they changed their whole concept. They used to have these stores with low lights and loud music, and now they're just like normal stores. How do you feel about brands completely changing their identity? Like, would you change the identity of your brand just to follow trends?
No, I definitely would not change my brand at all. See, trends can be tricky because there's so many up and downs. Now you get too deep into one trend, you put all your eggs in one basket, and then 6 months to a year down the road, you're looking at a completely different brand that's out of date and out of style. And from our early business practices, we realized that it's easier to get a returning customer than a new customer. So it's about creating that loyal fan base from the start, and that's why I mentioned starting locally. Because if you can get your small town or your small city behind you, then it's only up from there.
Of course, the small community of the small town must be proud to see your brand now selling out so many clothes all over the States. I was wondering, what's the plan for LUXUS? I remember in 2018 when your brand became very, very popular in the streetwear culture. Did COVID-19 impact the sales of your brand? Because that was like, your brand became very popular like a year and a half before the pandemic, maybe?
Yeah, I would say COVID honestly boosted the sales. Now, it boosted online sales, but in-store sales obviously took a hit. But I would say we saw more of a trend in our online sales, and that mainly comes from people staying at home, being on their phones all the time, and making the product a little bit easier to market because people are constantly searching and looking for something to do. So I think COVID-19, I wouldn't say it helped our business, but it definitely made us adapt and, just get better for the future. For, you never know what can happen. So.
Fantastic. What's the plan for LUXUS? Like, are you planning on launching in the UK as well? Because as we know, you're currently available only in retail stores in the United States.
Yeah, we would, if we were going to branch out to London, we feel like in the UK, we feel like we'd want to go more towards stores that are only London based and only UK based. Now we have lots of stores that we're in a lot of stores that are in the UK as well, but we want to create just a different feeling to the brand, not like you can walk in any store and just buy it, kind of more of an
flagship.
exclusivity. A little bit exclusive, but at the same time, make it feel like a homey brand.
Yeah, that's fantastic, man. I wish you all the best for that. And yeah, that's it. Thank you so much, Jordan, for taking your time to join our podcast.
Thank you, Antonio. I think this story and my partner's story can inspire a lot of people to, think more outside of the box, whether it's not even fashion. It's just about getting out there and making a name for yourself and working hard. That's kind of what our motto is. And our main slogan is dream big, live big. So we live by that motto every single day, and we think you should too.
Thank you so much, Jordan, for the time you took, and also for all these words that you are spending for all our listeners who will surely take in consideration what you said. And maybe, who knows, someone who listens is going to be inspired to create their own brand.
Yeah, I mean, if anybody's listening to this podcast, you can always shoot me a message, and I would love to see any ideas anybody can come up with. I'm an open book, so
that's very rare. That's very rare that a successful clothing owner says something like that. So if you're listening and you have a clothing brand and you want some advice, make sure to contact Jordan Tabone, and his advice is surely going to be something very priceless, I'd say. Well, thank you so much, Jordan, for your time. And yeah, that's it. Make sure you subscribe, and see you on the next episode.